Hey everybody, Questwise back again this week with some more Vigilante goodness. That's right, we're continuing our series on the Vigilante City Vigilante Hack by Bloat Games. In week number 1, we've been doing this for this is our 4th week now doing this kind of thing. I've been having a lot of fun with this. Hope you guys are enjoying this as well too. Really excited about Vigilante Hack. Can't wait till you guys can get your hands on Vigilante City. It's going to be amazing. But looks like week number 1 we started with origin stories of vigilantes and how to create great origin stories for your characters. Week number 2 focused on the city and city creation and a place for your vigilantes to live and thrive and fight crime in. Last week we touched on villains and how to make great villains and make sure that they have motivations that match their nefarious deeds that they're pulling off. This week we're going to talk about group dynamic between characters for your Vigilante Hack, Vigilante City experience. First and foremost, for the most part, there's going to be more than one player character in the game. Now, you can run this completely as a solo adventure if you wanted to. If you wanted to have one game master and one character, one vigilante, totally possible. The Vigilante Hack and Vigilante City system, based on the OSR Gaming and the Black Hack systems, respectively, works very well in running solo adventures if you want to. But most of the time, I think you're going to have more than one vigilante. And you kind of want to have a group dynamic of why they're working together, what is their purpose together, that kind of thing. That's what we're going to touch on today. So let me pull up my notes here real quick and take a look at where we want to begin. So first of all, we want to talk about how the vigilantes work together. Like why? What is their purpose behind it? And how did they meet? Or how did they work together? Now, a lot of times this can kind of be done, be kind of processed before the game actually begins, usually during character creation. If you sit down together with your players and create characters together, a lot of times this is something you should bring up at that point and say, hey, okay, we have all your cool characters made now. How do they know each other? Where have they had experiences together before? Different possibilities. Are they related? Maybe like, Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman. Maybe they're married. Maybe you have a couple characters that are married. Maybe they're father and son. Maybe they're brother and sister. Maybe they're, maybe they're twins, that kind of cool thing. Maybe it's master and sidekick kind of idea. Maybe it's like a Batman and Robin kind of duo, in which the reason you know each other is because one of the characters has been training underneath the other one for a long period of time. It could also be a mutual philosophy, sort of like the X-Men. They've been all brought together by one individual who kind of oversees them, and they have a sort of common goal that they're kind of shooting for. Like Xavier's School for Gifted Children, that they've all sort of got a mutual philosophy that they've come together to support. So that's one possibility. Another way that can be kind of fun but a little bit more challenging is not having the characters know each other at all before the game starts, and have that be part of the actual in-game process of them meeting and coming together. Now, if you have a large group of characters, it's going to be a little more awkward, I think, in a game, especially if you start very small, which we talked about in the city back in week 2, where I gave the advice that if you should always, not always, but it's more convenient to start small and then kind of grow from there. If you have a large group of characters, you might want to think about maybe increasing the size of your city or increasing the scope of your game a little bit if you want to do this sort of in-game sort of meet and greet kind of thing. Otherwise, if you start very small and you have all these vigilantes who live in a very small space, chances are they probably already bumped into each other now and then. But if you have a smaller group, like 2 to 3 players, it works perfectly well if you're starting with a smaller city or town sort of event. So it can be kind of a fun exercise to have them sort of meet in-game and have them team up that way. Sort of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when they meet Casey Jones, right? It's that kind of thing that they've sort of lived in the same area together, but they kind of they they connect after maybe fighting its common criminal together as well too. So that can be kind of fun as well too. That's the first thing you kind of got to try to decide upon is how your vigilantes have met and how they work together, and what it is that brings them as a cohesive team. Or maybe they're not a cohesive team. That's the other thing that can be, we'll talk about in a little bit later as well too. Next, you want to kind of focus upon what the role of each character is. Is there a sort of sweet spot of normal characters in the game that they all work together perfectly? Do you want to have a game of all sort of like true vigilantes? Or do you want to have a game of all anthropomorphic animals? Now, those are completely plausible type of scenarios, but it's also kind of a nice dynamic if each player has a certain role to play. So you have the speedster, you have the strength, the strong man. You might have the leader who's in charge of tactics. You might have the healer. Think of it like a D&D campaign kind of an idea, right? That every sort of player has a certain role to play. What's really fun and dynamic, though, especially with an experienced game master, is taking those ideas and twisting them a bit. Having a game full of just one type of character, whether they be all true vigilantes, or they all be scions, or again, like all sort of anthropomorphic animals. Fun kind of a twist, but it's also a much more wholesome game if you have a wide variety of roles that you play. And in such, if your characters know each other and they've worked together before, they begin to learn to work together as a cohesive group. It's interesting to see in sort of how they can support each other and what kind of cool gameplay scenarios pop up by these characters sort of supporting each other. Think of the fastball special, right? This is the thing where the Thing from the Fantastic Four throws Wolverine into into the fray, as it were. These cool combinations that you kind of learn over time, that of characters supporting each other and doing things as a cohesive team. Next, we want to talk about team size. Now, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Like I said, Vigilante Hack, Vigilante City, they both work really, really well, depending on the whatever scale of number of players that you have in your group. You can play it solo. Works best, I think, most games, at least for me, as my personal opinion as a game master, works best between like 2 to 5 players, right? That's kind of the sweet spot. You can do it with more. You can have bigger teams if you want to. Or something I thought would be an really interesting idea is to have every player create several different vigilantes. Anywhere between 2 to 4, all right? And in doing so, you sort of make a giant group of vigilantes, right? A big group. Think the Avengers, but they're broken into smaller little teams that can focus upon certain tasks that come up. So you might not have like Iron Man at every, and I'm just spitballing out superheroes here. A lot of these superheroes are not things that you're going to create in Vigilante City, Vigilante Hack. But say you're not going to want to say let's do Punisher. You're not going to want to have Punisher in every. He might not just be you might want a more stealthy type of operation to happen. But you have a large group pool of players who want to play, and you don't want the guy, if you want to do a stealthy operation, you don't want the character who blows up everything, who's the demolitions expert, there for a stealthy mission. Thus, the players can kind of choose from their pool of vigilantes on who goes on what sort of mission, and allows you to have a larger group of players playing characters that fit the sort of scenario that you're focusing upon that particular session. Next comes inter-party conflict. This happens all throughout comic books, all throughout history. You can see this in superhero movies, superhero fiction. This stuff happens all the time. Characters are not always going to have the same perception of things when it comes to fighting crime. And this is going to create a very fun group dynamic in itself as well. I'm not talking about like pitting one player against another and having a sort of PvP, player versus player thing. But it's interesting to sort of have players when they create their characters, their vigilantes, they're going to have different moral compasses. They're going to have different views on crime itself. So, for instance, let's take two. Let's take the Punisher from Marvel Comics, and let's take Spider-Man from Marvel Comics. Two completely different sort of viewpoints when it comes to fighting crime. Punisher just wants to go in and punish people. He's going to go in there and he's going to alleviate the crime the best way that he knows how. That might be through extreme violence. Spider-Man, on the other hand, a little bit softer side of things. He's going to try to stop the crime before they happen, as well as maybe sort of like just capture or dissuade the villains from doing this sort of crime, these bad actions. When you pit those two together, when you put them in a team dynamic together, they're going to clash. There's going to be a variety of different ways the players are going to want to play their vigilantes, and how their ideals, their ideologies are going to clash. And this is going to make a great dynamic in your game as well too. It's cool, to have a team like X-Men get along all the time, but you'll see that throughout the comics and throughout the movies and stuff. Wolverine just doesn't get along with Cyclops. They have two different viewpoints of the world and how things should be done. Take Professor X and Magneto. Two, again, friends, but on opposite sides of the coin. A lot of the times makes them enemies as well too. But they have a dynamic goal. They have a direct goal that they're all trying to solve at the same time, but taking it from sort of different opportunities. So having a dynamic group of characters who might not always get along will make a very fantastic thing as well, again, too. So here's our talk today on group dynamics and how to bring those characters together and how to make a cohesive team who might not always get along, but they definitely have a common goal in mind, and that is to make the world a better place. Vigilante Hack, Vigilante City by Bloat Games. Go check out Vigilante Hack right now. Is available on Drive-Thru RPG, and as well as all its supplements, the Game Master's Guide, Sanctuary Asylum. Vigilante City will be coming out very, very soon. Once all the Kickstarter stuff is done and the Kickstarter backers get their things, that'll be available to the public as well too. If you were lucky enough to get in on the Vigilante City Kickstarter, I can't wait for you guys to get this in your hands. It's going to be an amazing, amazing project with a wealth of great stuff that's come out stretch goal wise as well too. So I'm Questwise, and until next time, next week we're going to talk about the moral compass. We're going to talk about what it is that drives your vigilante, and how maybe they view crime a little differently from others. So again, until next time, I'm Questwise, and we're out.